In this video, we're going to talk about the different quadrants in the coordinate plane. You need to fill in your foldable as we go. So here you can see I've got each, over here I have each box is going to represent one of the flaps on your foldable on the outside. And the first one, underneath where you have the label for quadrant 1, you're going to write the title of quadrant 1 at the top, like it's shown up here. Now we're going to talk about quadrant 1. Quadrant 1 is this quadrant right here. And the x and y values in quadrant 1. Let's look at the x values. The x values are the ones down here. What can you tell me about all those x values there? Hopefully you can tell me that they're all positive numbers. Now let's look at the y values. The y values go along here. And again, the y values are all positive numbers as well. That's why this quadrant here is quadrant 1, because it's where both the x and the y are positive values. You need to, first of all, let's find the coordinates of point M, the ordered pair for point M. Well, x goes first, and m is at 3, and the y is 4. So our ordered pair for M is 3, 4. Please write that down on your in your foldable. The next thing is all of the x values in quadrant 1, these x values down here, all of those will always be positive. And the same with the y values. All of the y values will also be positive. So it doesn't matter what point it is in the first quadrant. If it's in quadrant 1, it will have a positive x and a positive y. All right, let's talk about quadrant 2. Quadrant 2 is this quadrant over here. And quadrant 2, well, let's first talk about point A. The coordinates of point A is -5, 3. So A is -5, 3. Using that ordered pair, what can you tell me about all the x values in quadrant 2? Hopefully you can tell me, and let's look at the bottom here. All these x values out down here, what's special about them? Hopefully you can tell me that they are all negative numbers. Now let's look at the y values. The y values along here. They're all positive numbers. So if a coordinate, if a point is in quadrant 2, it will have a negative x value and a positive y value, like our ordered pair A or point A. All right, now let's talk about quadrant 3. Quadrant 3 is this quadrant down here. Now, quadrant 3, we have point T, which is in our quadrant 3, and let's find the coordinates of point T. So we have -4. Remember, x always goes first, and -4 is on the x-axis. -4 and -2. So our coordinates for point T are -4, -2. All right, now let's look at our x values in our quadrant 3. They're all negative numbers. So that means that our x value will always be negative in quadrant 3. Let's look at our y values now. Our y values are also all negative, which means that if both the y and the x value are negative, that it's in quadrant 3. Okay, our last quadrant, quadrant 4. We have point H down here, which is in our quadrant 4. The coordinates of point H are 1, -5, 1, -5. And now let's look at our x values. Our x values are along here. What can you tell me about our x values in quadrant 4? Hopefully you can tell me that they are all positive numbers, so our x values are always positive. Now let's look at our y values down here. What do you notice about them? Hopefully you notice that they're all negative, so our y values are always negative. All right, now here we've outlined the different quadrants and what's positive and what's negative in each quadrant. Next, you're going to be given a point and have to tell me which quadrant it belongs in. So to remember that this quadrant up here is quadrant 1. I remember that quadrant 1 is the place where it all begins, where everything's positive, what the coordinate graph that you first learned on. So that's how I remember it's 1. Then I just remember it goes in order from there. So this would be 2, 3, and 4. Now it's very important that you don't write these as numbers, that you write them using the Roman numerals. All right, let's do some practice now. The first question is down here, and it says, which quadrant is the purple star in? So we look at our coordinate plane, and we find the purple star is here. Now, which quadrant is that in? Well, you can look at your foldable, or maybe you just remember it, or maybe you need to label them. That's a good recommendation if you're struggling. So remember that our top right quadrant is 1. I remember that because these are positive and these are positive as well. Both are x and y values. Then I go around counterclockwise. This quadrant over here is 2. This one's 3. And then over here we have 4. So our purple star is in quadrant 4. All right, which shape is in quadrant 2? Well, this is my quadrant 2 right here. And the shape is a brown heart. All right, which quadrant is the circle in? Our circle is right here, and it's in quadrant 1. Which shape is in quadrant 3? Well, quadrant 3 is here, and the shape is a rectangle. Sorry, it didn't turn out very well. We have a rectangle. So hopefully you understand now how to identify things in different quadrants. It's just something you need to memorize. Now we're going to look at using quadrant planes as maps. So using these graphs as a map, it's how we can use them in real life, one of the real life situations we'll talk about. So let's look at this grid down here. First of all, I'm just going to let you know, this is our first quadrant, or quadrant 1, because we only have positive x and y values. All right, now it says Scott walked from the furniture store to the science lab, and then from the science lab to the bakery. How far did Scott walk in all? All right, we looked in here at our graph. We have a whole bunch of different shapes here, different pictures. And then over here we have a legend, which tells us what each of those shapes or pictures mean. So we are going to use this legend to figure out if Scott started at the furniture store. Okay, furniture store is here, so that's this chair. So Scott starts at the furniture store right here, and then he goes to the science lab, which is marked by this symbol, so this symbol right here, and then he goes from the science lab to the bakery, and the bakery is our bread, which is right here. How far does Scott walk in all? Okay, well, let's do what Scott would do. So we start at the furniture store, we go 1, 2 to get to the lab. And then from the lab to the bakery, 1, 2, 3. So let's count how far it is in total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Scott walked 5 units in total. Let's do another example. Anthony walked from the hotel to the car dealership, and then from the car dealership to the library. How far did Anthony walk in all? All right, we need to find the hotel. So our hotel is the bed here, which I can find right here. So we walked from the hotel to the car dealership, then to the car dealership, which is marked by the car. So we'll highlight the car dealership. And then from the car dealership to the library, and the library is marked by a book. The library is down here. So let's count. He started at the hotel and he went to the car dealership. That's 1. And then the car dealership to the library. 2, 3, 4, 5. So Anthony walked 5 units in total. We have one last example, and this one's a little bit harder. Tim walked from the radio tower to the library, and then from the library to the science lab. If each grid line stands for 700 meters, how far did Tim walk? Well, the first thing we have to do is find out how many units, or how many grid lines, Tim walked. So he started in the radio tower. The radio tower is this one here, so we'll start here. Then he goes to the library, which we'll mark in yellow. The library, which is down here. And then from the library to the science lab, which is down here. So first let's figure out how far he walked. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Tim walked 7 units But then we need to find how far it is in meters. And if we know that each one of these stands for 700 meters, we need to multiply our 7 by 700 to find out how far he walked in total. So I'm going to put the 700 on top and multiply that by 7. 7 times 0 is 0, 7 times 0 is 0, and 7 times 7 is 49. So that means that Tim walked a total of 4,900 meters. All right, now it's time for you to practice this on your own. I'll talk to you later.